And we are live. Georgia, thank you so much for joining me today for episode 45 of the Gymnastics Growth Show. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Look, I'm really jealous that you are, within throwing distance of a beach, and I've got the complete opposite conditions here. It's very cold and snowy, so we've got, quite different conditions because we're on different parts of the world. But it's great that we're here to connect, and we've been meaning to do an episode for a while. So I'm just always love interviewing or chatting with coaches who are also former high-level athletes, and of course, as a former dual Olympian, Commonwealth medalist, world team member. It's amazing that we've got someone of your experience here to talk about, athlete experience, but also how you've been able to transition that into coaching and what you're doing now. So let's start talking about your entry into coaching. I think might be a nice start. So we've obviously got a very impressive resume and history as a high-level athlete for Australia. When did you make the decision that you wanted to transition into coaching?
I don't think when I started coaching, it was something that I had decided that I wanted to do. I don't think I made that decision until, to be honest, probably a couple of years ago. I think I just fell into it. I was still sort of in the retirement blues, I guess, a little bit. And coaching was right in front of me. And I didn't really have a huge amount of break between when I was an athlete and when I started coaching. So in hindsight, maybe that's something I should have done. But I sort of fell into coaching. I didn't actually initially enjoy it at the start. And then when I started understanding how to coach, and not just saying technical things to kids, I started really kind of understanding the benefits that you could really do as a coach. And then and then I started just really liking unpicking things, like how do you teach things and how do you like break stuff down. And I just really, really enjoyed it after that.
Yeah, awesome. So would you say there was an element of frustration when you first started, because obviously coaching was unfamiliar? Very, very different. Yeah. Trying to get a kid to do something that you can already do very naturally. Like you're just able to do it because you've been that high level athlete, but maybe it was frustrating having to try and draw that from someone who didn't have the same ability or the same, competency at the time as you have, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I just didn't really understand. I'd give a very plain instruction, and the kid just wouldn't understand it. And I don't understand what else can I do? I'm like, I've done my job. I said the correction. That's it. So I didn't really get it. And I was the last young gymnast that I had been around were the ones that I grew up with. So and we all, I guess had very similar goals and things like that. So I just was kind of thrown into coaching like lots of different types of kids, lots of different types of abilities, different goals. And I just had to adjust really. But once I did, I really loved it. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started to love it more when you, I guess when you saw some progress, like you felt like you were making progress yourself and perhaps you were helping the athletes. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think what I really, when it really clicked was when I had times where I was coaching gymnasts that they had a problem with a skill, or they had a fear with a skill or a mental block, and I could really try and I had to work out how I could best help. So it wasn't very, I couldn't just read out of a book and say like, they need a hit handstand or whatever. I had to work it out, and it was, different for each kid. So there wasn't a simple solution. But after going through the process of working out how to help them, I just found it really rewarding, really. And then, I thought it was, what a neat job.
Yeah, awesome. Well, impact. You make an impact on other people's lives, and contribution always makes us feel good, doesn't it? When we feel like we're contributing to others.
Exactly.
being selfless. I wonder if that's the same process of being an athlete, that you enjoy things more when you feel like you're making progress and you're growing as a person. And maybe it's the same instance here, that you feel like you're making progress and then you kind of fall addicted, you fall in love and obsessed with that process of, okay, struggle, improve, achieve. Okay, now on to the next task, struggle, improve, achieve. Because I find personally as a coach, it is that journey never ending. When I first started coaching, I didn't have a performance background. Of course, I was a recreational athlete, so everything was a bit of a struggle to try and understand. But then, of course, you do understand. Okay, that's how you teach a handstand. Then you achieve that with your gymnasts. But then you go back to struggle again, because all of a sudden, now I'm not being asked to teach a handstand. I've got to try and teach a Yurchenko. Well, I don't know what a Yurchenko is. I don't know what the progressions are. So you struggle again. And then you tick that box, and then you go, right, now it's a double twisting Yurchenko or a full twisting Yurchenko. Heck, I've got no idea how to do that. And this is constant cycle of like struggle, figure it out, achieve. And I find that is the addictive part. It's that cycle. And I wonder whether that's similar for athlete and coach.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a cycle. It never ends, really. And I'm really kind of just finding that now, because I'm really, I guess with coaching, I had the same sort of mentality as an athlete. I really wanted to master something. Like I wanted to tick it off. Like, yes, 100%, I know how to do that. And as a coach, I know how to teach that. So there's, and then you go on to the next sort of progression of things and the next progression. But I guess what I'm now learning is that there's no, I ask a lot of questions to a lot of, my mentors and senior coaches around me. And there's no one right answer for something. And it's that's frustrating to me, because I want the right answer. But I guess I'm understanding now that there's so many different ways to do things and so many right answers. And because you're working with people and children, things are constantly changing and everyone is completely different. So it is an art in a way. It is definitely an art.
I think so. I think it's a highly complex environment, because you're working with people. Whenever you introduce interaction, it becomes complex, because of course humans are emotional. And like you've quite rightly said and understand, we're all completely different. And what was interesting, you said that there's so many right ways of doing things. And I think that's a really valid point, because as coaches, we often think that every way is wrong apart from the way that we do. And it's like, well, that's not the case. There are 10, 15, 20 ways, correct ways of teaching something. You just got to choose that avenue to go down. Knowing which avenue to go down is the hardest part. And it's obviously where more experienced coaches will benefit, because they've seen a lot of gymnastics. They go to a lot of countries. They have worked with a lot of people, asked a lot of questions. So actually they've got this kind of whole selection of different options that are available to them, I find anyway. I'd just like to go back to your point about helping athletes with either mental blocks or some challenges that they were going through. Did you call on your experience there as an athlete? And did you feel that really helped you to kind of almost that level of empathy, like stepping into their world, and that allowed you to help them more?
Yeah, definitely. I actually ended up towards the end of my career as an athlete, getting like the occasional mental block on some skills. And it was incredibly frustrating, especially if there was a competition coming up, especially if it was a skill that I'd been doing for years. But, my way of dealing with that might not be the way that helps the gymnast that I'm trying to help. So I can, I guess, touch upon it, but it might not, work necessarily for that kid. So I've had to, try and find different ways and different resources to go about helping kids that have mental blocks, which is such a horrible thing to be going through, mental blocks, because they don't know what's happening. The coach doesn't know what's happening, and there's just frustration all around. So, I try and touch on how I dealt with it, but again, everyone's different.
Yeah. I'm sure there's an awful lot of empathy that you have for the athletes, just maybe even subconsciously. You don't even realize you're not having to try hard to do that, because you know what it's like as an athlete yourself, particularly if you've experienced some of those things. it sounds like there's a lot of reflection that's going on in your coaching and an awful lot of problem solving. And I think they're two key skills that all coaches need to have. Like the ability to problem solve is so important because, like, again, like you've just said, no two athlete is the same. Maybe the experience that you have is something that you can call on for some athletes, but not for others. So again, you've gone, right, how do I fix this?
Yeah.
Where's the remedy? Like, what's the resource? Who do I need to talk to? What are my options that are available? Let's now just delve into the athlete coach experience, because obviously you have been on both sides of that. You've been an athlete having a close relationship with coaches, your coaching team, and now you're probably, I'm assuming, trying to foster a really close relationship and a great working relationship with the athletes that you work with. So what's different about that? Because again, you've seen it from both sides, and so I'm really interested to know what your feeling is around the athlete coach relationship in general.
Yeah, I felt like I was very, very lucky with the coaches that I had. I found it really quite easy to communicate with them, and I feel like I had this conversation in the gym the other day actually about you know, when you're dealing with young kids, sometimes it's difficult that they don't want to listen to you, or they don't listen to you because they're kids. There's lots of things going on. There's lots of distractions. You know, basics are boring sometimes. All these sorts of variables. But when I reflect on my relationship with my coach, the reason why it was so easy to I guess listen to him and do what my coach told me to do was because I respected him as a person and I trusted him as a person. And you know, when I look back at you know, our sort of athlete coach relationship, all the things that kind of stand out in my memories are the moments of kindness that they showed me. And I think that when I'm coaching now, that kind of stays in my mind a lot, because if I'm remembering it when I was 11 years old, these tiny, insignificant little moments of, you know, just being a brilliant human being, you know, the kids that I'm coaching are going to remember that too. And that's where the, I guess the connection and the listening and the respect and the, you know, I want to do what you're saying because I trust you. I trust that you have, you know, the right answers. And if you don't have the right answers, I know that you're going to find them. So I think that's where it all kind of stemmed from, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, a really powerful message for coaches to understand and hear, is that you said they seem insignificant, but those little markers have stood out, and you're able to recall them and remember them, even from what is, you know, nearly 20 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
and it's those little insignificant moments, and I guess there's so many opportunities for those because we're with athletes daily, aren't we? You know, we spend a lot of time with them. And so it might be, it's not always the big things. And when I have the you know, conversations with athletes all the time and say, you know, what are your fondest memories of being in the gym or as an athlete in your career? It's rarely I won this medal, you know, I stood on the podium, I passed this level. It's more, you know, oh, we had this crazy car ride one time and it was just so much fun, and we were having, you know, goofing around with the friends in the car, or on a training camp with all the teammates together. All those moments of kindness and you know, and connection between coach and athlete, they're the moments that really stand out most for athletes, which is remarkable because as coaches, a lot of coaches turn around and say, well, you know, my athlete won this medal and I got to go on this trip, and you know, it's remarkable really that maybe an 11-year-old isn't able to articulate what respect is, but they can feel it.
They can feel it. They can definitely feel it. There's you know, I remember a moment of I think it was Easter, and you know, everyone was talking about the chocolates they got at Easter time, and I think that particular Easter, for some reason, I don't know what happened. I didn't get any chocolates or anything, and I was sort of like, it was fine. Like I don't care. But my coach asked me about, oh, what'd you get for Easter? And did you get lint bunny or something? I said, oh, I didn't get anything this year. And then the next day or two in my locker, there was a little basket of, you know, little chocolate eggs. and said, "From the Easter Bunny." And I was like, "Did you, like, was that?" And he was like, "No, it was the Easter Bunny. I didn't I didn't do it." But it's those little moments that just show that they care about you as a human, and they see you as a child, but respect you as a human being and want the best for you.
Yeah, it's
Just
seeing through the athlete and knowing that it is a child. It's a child that does gymnastics. It's
yes,
not necessarily gymnastics. It's a child that does gymnastics. So let's coach the child to do gymnastics. And
yeah,
in order to do that, you've got to respect the fact that, one, they're a child. Two, they're very impressionable. Three, we all want the same things in life. We all want to feel loved, feel
yeah,
connected, feel like we're growing, make a contribution, etc., etc. So I think, look, that snippet there, that last few minutes, is so powerful for coaches to hear, just to make them consciously aware of how those small interactions can make a difference. And again, those things might have been 20 years ago, but you're now you're recording those, and you're probably, without even realizing, introducing those moments within your own gymnasts' lives as well. And again, it's subconscious, and I think it's absolutely awesome. It's the cycle of great coaching. This is how it works. You coach people, you coach great, and you help develop great people like yourself, who then are in the system of developing more great people, and then that cycle continues. We should never underestimate how easy that is for it to happen, but obviously it happens the other way around as well. bad
definitely.
Bad coaching can create bad people, or people with a lot of challenges that they carry forward in their life, and then that hurts, and then they go on hurting other people as a result of that. It's like you can flip it
100%.
around the other way.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't feel like, when I'm coaching, it's not all, I don't have great days every single day. And I'm like, if there's, a difficult moment or time, it's not like every single time I respond exactly how I want to respond. I know sometimes I can get impatient, and need to take a breath. Like, I think every single coach in any sport does. But I really make sure that I speak to my co-workers and my partner coaches and the people I work with, to make sure that just everyone is supporting each other in those moments, and just keeping an eye and watching. And if someone's had a bad day in their personal life, and it's really hard for them that day to bring their best self, I think it's really important that you have the right people around you to be able to help you in those moments in a positive, kind, empathetic way. I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, and that's really a high performing team. It's not that you don't make mistakes or there isn't issues or challenges. It's that those things are going to be expected, particularly within the high performance world, because everyone's pushing the limits, they're pushing the boundaries physically, technically, emotionally. What is going to make up that high performance team is all the things that you just said there. You're leveraging the resources that you've got around you, right? Your team, you're communicating, you're problem solving together, and it's that collective again that the sum of the parts quote. Yes, individually you're all great, but bring that together, and you've now got an awesome group of people, collective knowledge, which is extensive and very, very powerful. And so there's a lot in that, because whilst that seems really simple, a lot of people don't like to lose control by asking other people's perspectives, putting it out to the group, maybe using someone else's idea instead of your own. So how have you developed that line of thinking? Is that because as an athlete, again, that was the environment that you grew up in, or has it been more impactful in your time as a coach, understanding how important communication is?
Yeah, I think it definitely stemmed from being an athlete, because I remember certain, for example, I would finish a bar routine, and my coach would be so eager to help and coach, and sometimes I'd land a dismount and I'd feel like I was just being jumped on with everything that I did wrong. But he obviously didn't mean it in that way. He was just doing his job. He was just coaching. But I had that conversation and said, look, can you just give me 1 minute of just reflecting on my routine and just reflecting on my gym and letting me catch my breath for a second, and then we can have that moment of talking about where I need to improve on things. And like, it was fine. Like, there was no drama, no nothing escalated. It was just a conversation between two people. This is what's going to help me the most. I know you're doing X, Y, and Z to help me. Can we find a middle ground? So it's sort of I guess I see the same sort of thing in coaching. I know when I can get really passionate sometimes, and it's usually the days where I've done some like research on the weekend or something, or I've listened to lots of podcasts or looked at resources, and then I come in with a plan, like a really I want to implement something, and sometimes it doesn't go right, like for a number of different reasons. And I just speak to my partner coaches and speak to all the other coaches in the gym, so that they're aware, before I even have those moments, they're aware of, sometimes I just need someone to look at me and go, it's okay, just take a breath, like, try again tomorrow. And sometimes that's all I need. And I just think it's important to not expect perfection from yourself as a coach, even though that's your job to try and get that out of athletes. You're a human being. They're human beings. They're not going to be perfect. So if something doesn't go right, the world's not going to end. You just try again. That's it.
Yeah, really powerful lessons, I think, from athletes and coaches can both take a lot from that. And again, linking back to your example there of, you just needed a minute once you'd finished your routine before you received some feedback, and that should be a easy conversation to have with a coach, isn't it? Which in this case it was. You had that. It was an easy conversation, and you both got what you wanted, which was athletes happy, coaches happy, and you formulated probably a better plan, which is going to help both of you. You all want the same thing. That should be an easy conversation. And so, but there are, of course, athletes that would struggle to have a simple conversation like that, usually because perhaps the coach is feeling like, well, actually, I'm in charge here. You do as you're told. There's no negotiation. Just listen. Yeah. The athlete's job is to listen. The coach's job is to tell you what to do, not the other way around. So again, an important message. We talked earlier about athlete-coach relationship, and you really highlighted how communication was important. You provided such a good example there of how communication works effectively. And of course, what it takes is the emotional intelligence of the coach to not feel threatened, to not feel being attacked, to not feel like you're judging them as an individual. You're not. And if you were, there actually wouldn't be anything wrong in that. That is still part of the uncomfortable learning process of being a coach, and understanding that we have flaws. We're not perfect. There's things that we're always doing wrong, and we need feedback from other people in order to improve. So just pulling out some of the important lessons here, which I think are really, really powerful. How old were you when you started gymnastics?
I was 2 or 3 doing kinder gym, that sort of thing.
Super young.
Super young.
Kindy, right? Is that what you call it in Australia? Is that kindy?
Kinder gym, yes. I don't remember not doing gymnastics.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And so you've obviously, you've gone through that whole entire process. You had a great career. How different was it for you training as a senior than it was training as a developmental athlete, like someone 9, 10, 11 years old? And the second part to that question is, what do you think are some of the considerations that coaches should have when they're working with an athlete and they have a 20-year career with them and they've got to transition through that period?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a shift from when you're training as a young adolescent to when you're training as an adult. I think because I had that positive relationship with my coaches, I was able to communicate with them. I don't think, in terms of athlete-coach relationship, I don't think there was any turbulence, I guess, from my end. I don't know what my coach might say, but I think if I'm looking back at it now, if I was to do anything differently, it would be, I guess, not as an adult, not put all of my focus on the gymnastics. I think there's a lot more evidence and science out there that I guess shows, as a 23-year-old, you don't need to be doing all of those routines. You can be doing, the gymnastics, but then doing strength conditioning, and then doing, X, Y, and Z to help build what you need. And I also think that the balance that I had as an adult with my, I guess, relationship with gymnastics, I would have liked to have had a bit of a better balance, I think, because, I finished high school, I did bits and pieces of uni because I didn't know what I really wanted to do. And then I decided to just not study for a while so I can just focus on gymnastics and then rest and recover. But I don't necessarily think that was maybe the best thing for my performance, because gymnastics was all I had at that point. So I think it's important to make sure that, especially when they're developing as gymnasts, that they've got other stuff going on, so that it's not so much as a blow when it's time to retire, I think.
Yeah, so there's something there to help the transition period, because then there are a lot of athletes, you've probably experienced this yourself, your identity is you're a gymnast, particularly when you worked at your level, double Olympian, you are an international level gymnast. And so when you lose that sense of identity, there might be a massive void there, unless there's something else to kind of not fall back on, but to transition to and focus that attention.
Yeah. I think it's just also sometimes you need your mind to not be on gymnastics, and that's okay, because if you're doing your job in the gym and you're doing the work in the gym, then you don't need to be thinking about it outside the gym. It's you can switch on and off, and that's okay, that's healthy, it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I found the same thing as a coach, to be honest. I think there's a lot of coaches now struggling with lockdown, of course, because their passion is gymnastics and their life is absolutely 100% gymnastics. So gymnastics, to a certain extent, has been taken away right now. Whilst people are able to do Zoom training, obviously it's not the same. And there is this massive void. And I've felt myself, it's so important to have something else. Even if it's just like a hobby, at the minute I'm doing lots of photography and video stuff. I go fishing as well, not at the minute in lockdown, but I've got other activities. But I think I know, having been a personal coach, it's very difficult to find time to do anything else. And like an athlete, you get fully consumed with it. But I think you made a really important point. It's good to have something else to look forward to, something else to think about, and to grab our attention. So I think that's a good message for coaches there about working with older athletes, more mature athletes. Make sure that it's balanced. It's a balanced lifestyle for them, so that they don't burn out, and it helps to transition. What are some of the other considerations that you think a coach should have if they've got maybe some teenage athletes, which they're going to hopefully be working with into their late teens, early 20s? How does that dynamic change, or how might it need to change, do you think?
I think as a coach, if a coach is expecting things not to go perfectly in that transition when you're coaching teenagers, then they're gonna behave and act a little bit better, because their expectations aren't up here the whole time. When you're working with younger development athletes, it's different. It's different to teenagers, and even in my studies at the moment in psychology, the brain is still developing. Like, there's so much that's actually going on, that it's not just a gymnast being moody, and it's not just they're being difficult because of X, Y, and Z. Like, there's so much going on, and everyone goes through that period of time where they're just unsettled, and that's okay. If you expect it and you don't fight it, then it makes for the whole transition to be a lot smoother if you're not fighting it. You're just doing the best that you can.
So you think, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. You mentioned the word expectations. So, and I talked about this in the last podcast with Kale. You've got standards, you've got expectations, but I've been thinking about the word tolerance recently, which is that I think coaches that have a low tolerance are in really kind of dangerous territory if their expectations are high at the same time. For example, if you have high expectations for a particular athlete performing a skill and they make a mistake, and you don't have even a little bit of tolerance for them to make an error, that quickly becomes an issue. You create an athlete that's got this kind of what I call 100% syndrome, like a perfectionist mindset. They can't accept failure. They've got a really bad relationship with failure because there's always a consequence for making mistakes. So what you're saying here is that your standards haven't shifted. Like, you still want and are striving together for the same things, but you've introduced a little bit more tolerance to how things are performed. Let's say that might be consistency. That might be, one day they're fantastic, the next day they're not. Maybe their capacity to train is slightly less. Maybe they need to communicate more. You've got to have a buffer, like a threshold there. Am I on the right lines?
Yeah, definitely. You have to have you just have to have, I guess, the understanding and the just the awareness of that. It might not work. And that, I guess, that goes for any particular stage in gymnastics, but I guess specifically, that stage of being a teenager, it is really difficult. And I think if you're just aware, and you just keep reminding yourself, sometimes I just keep reminding myself, I'll just try my best. That's all I can do. I remind my kids that as well. All you can do is just try your best with the information that you know, and then try again. Try something different. If that didn't work, try something else. Find some resources, try and implement that. If that works, great. If it doesn't, then that's okay as well. But as long as they're going to improve no matter what. Like, if they're turning up into the gym and they're, doing the program, or even a little bit of the program, they're going to be improving. But the rate of that is what is adjustable, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. This is gold, Georgia. This is gold. I love it. There's so much valuable insight here. Just the little bits of terminology you're mentioning, about emotional intelligence, empathy, being resourceful, communicating. I mean, it's like a masterclass in just important stuff for coaches to consider. It really is, and this is why I absolutely love talking to former high-level athletes that have transitioned to coaching, because obviously their level of awareness, another great word that you used, is different. It's a deeper level of understanding because you've been on the receiving end. Like, I've been coached, but I've been coached how to do like a cartwheel for like an hour a week. It's not the same. I've never had a deep athlete coach relationship with someone. I've never experienced trauma as an athlete or adversity and struggle. It's very difficult for me to relate to that from my own personal experience, but it's important for me to still understand those things. And so I have to call on advice from people like yourself to step into the athlete's world, see it through their eyes, and understand how they're feeling. So I'm loving this conversation. Thank you. Really, thank you.
No worries.
What are some of your ongoing challenges as a coach? Because, I mean, how long have you been coaching now?
Or I think 2014, 15, I started.
Okay,
maybe.
cool. Yeah.
So 5-6 years.
Yeah. And so, long enough, obviously, to, obviously you're not just starting this out. You've been doing it for a good few years now. You've got a lot of experience. So, but what are those ongoing challenges that you find yourself kind of struggling with, if there are any?
Yeah. I think I touched on it before. I think, my mentality as an athlete was very, very, I don't want to say black and white, but if I wanted to do something, I guess I would fixate on it until I did it. So sometimes as a coach, I can fixate on things, and that's, again, a conversation that I have with partner coaches of, can you make sure that I don't get too caught up in this technique? Like, I want it to be technically perfect. But, you got to have some sort of give, and you got to let them go a little bit. So I just make sure that I have those conversations with coaches around me. I had a conversation with Jeb Salisbury the other day about twisting, and I was asking about how he teaches twisting, and he was like, there's this method, and then there's this method that you can do, and then the one arm, and I was like, but what's the method? What is the method? The gold standard method? He's like, there's no gold standard method. Like I was getting frustrated because I'm like, just give me the right answer. But yeah, it's part of learning for me. Just figuring out that this is working for these kids in this cycle, and the next cycle it might not work for them at all, and I could be like, I don't understand. So there's that whole side of it, but I think also in terms of teaching children, I think, again, reflecting as an athlete, I think I had quite a high sense of morality sometimes. Like there was things that were right and things that were wrong. It was just right or wrong. There was no in between. And if I was doing leg lifts or something, I lost count, and I'm like, I could say it's about 20, but I'd have to start all over again, because what if it's not 20? What if I'm not actually doing the numbers? Like, I'd kind of, again, fixate on things like that sometimes. But I think when I teach kids, and there's so many different kids with different environments, and they have different skills and personalities, I guess teaching right and wrong is something that, it's like in a classroom, there's going to be, arguments amongst the kids, and, this kid said this and this kid said this. And I guess I have a pretty strong urge to, like, I will stop the class and make someone apologize to another person, and no one will be doing gymnastics if I have to, because you need to apologize because you did this, or something like that. So I think I'm working on my flexibility a little bit, because as much as there's value in that, I'm teaching gymnastics. So I guess I don't know if that's something to work on, it, or if it's a good thing. I haven't figured it out yet. But I guess the way I see a coach is I'm teaching children. I'm able to teach children through gymnastics. Yeah. Gymnastics is the vessel that I'm using to be able to help children. So I try and keep that in mind. I actually forgot what the initial question was.
It was about years of coaching, but you've covered it. You've covered it. You've done it. Don't worry.
Great.
You answered the question really well. What's been your best resource as a coach, or resources in terms of like upskilling your own development?
I think it's just the coaches around me, whoever is around me. I just like to know how everyone has a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And I just really like to know their perspective on why that works for them, and why that's their preferred method of teaching a skill. I just find it very interesting, because I've got the things in my head that my coach taught me and how I learned things, and I thought that it worked well for me, and in my head that's the gold standard because it worked well for me, but that doesn't mean it's going to work well for everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people that you can
yeah.
Again,
And the internet.
Yeah.
The internet. I don't think in today's day and age that there really is much of a excuse not to develop as a coach or as a person. because there's just resources are just so easy to access. There's so many, web pages, YouTube, podcasts, just so much stuff out there that it's a great day and age to be a coach, to be a teacher.
Yeah, I think so too. And it just comes down to attitude, doesn't it? Like the resources are there. It's just whether you've got the attitude or not to bother finding them, delving into it, taking it seriously. That's all it comes down to. We've never. I mean, even when I first started coaching, social media wasn't around. Facebook didn't exist at the very first part of coaching, and lots changed in a short period of time. But it just comes down to attitude.
Yeah, 100%.
Just a couple more questions, Georgia. What would you like to see gymnastics develop into in the future, or how do you think the sport needs to continue to evolve? I know that you're working hard with some organizations to make sure that gymnastics is a great environment for athletes in the future. Is there anything in particular that you think that you would like to happen or see happen?
I think it's a big question. I think there's certain things that are heading in the right direction. I think when you compare gymnastics to a lot of different sports, I don't think we've really scratched the surface of what is possible with our sport and where it can go. Just even in terms of popularity and things like that. I think science is really coming into it in a very strong way the last couple of years, which I think is amazing, because you can't argue with it. It's so beneficial in just it's so beneficial. And I think a lot of small basic things are changing. That's just going to, it's just going to allow gymnasts to continue with the sport for longer. And it's not going to once they finish, that's it. They'd close their door on the sport forever. So I think if we all kind of keep having these conversations and keep kind of going in the right direction, I think we're going to see some really positive changes in the coming years. We just got to work at it. Nothing comes without hard work.
Yeah, and be adaptable, like you said. Be flexible.
Flexible,
as you mentioned before. Be flexible, and all coaches got to do that right now, and just be flexible. And some things need to happen, will happen, whether coaches like it or not. You might as well be at the forefront of that and just be part of that journey rather than trying to fight. Again, all things that you've mentioned. Don't fight it, go with it.
I think also if there's a lot of coaches who have been coaches for a very, very long time, and they've got a huge amount of experiences, and sometimes when things start changing, it is really scary. It can be really scary. And as a young coach coming up, I think it can be very easy to start for there to be tension there, and for arguments to start, and for I don't know, even judgment and bickering and things like that. But I think if you're confident in what you're doing, and you think that what you're doing is right, and you're not doing any harm to anyone, then sometimes it might be contradictory to what I said before, but sometimes it's beneficial to just stay in your lane and to just continue doing what you're doing, and let the results and let the environment speak for itself. And then hopefully that might influence the next, and then the next gym, and then the next gym, and hopefully.
Yeah. Awesome. So to finish up, can you give like 2 or 3 points for athletes and coaches, like just quick things that come to mind? Like, what would your best advice be to athletes that are on the journey and want to kind of model the same results and performances that you've had? And then perhaps for coaches who are, again, have been on the same journey as you. So started off without coaching experience and are now on this journey of performance gymnastics.
I think for coaches, I think the main thing that I would say is to don't think you've learnt everything, because there's always something else for you to learn. And, you know, I think ego comes into that a lot. You know, just continue to learn. I think keep the door open. Don't close the door on your own development. And in terms of athlete, I think, I mean, I said it before, I think it sounds really, really simple, but just try your best, I think, is the most important thing. Because, you know, if you walk into the gym and you've had a really horrible day at school and you're sore and you've only got like 40% left in the tank, just give those 40%. That's okay. Don't worry about the other 60. Like, don't focus on what you don't have right now. Just give your best and be patient with results, because it doesn't happen like that.
Great advice on both sides. Georgia, I've loved this conversation. There's just so much good in it. Really, really awesome. I just want to thank you for being generous with your time.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. It's really awesome, and you've shared so much gold dust for athlete and coach to listen to. So yeah, very, very grateful. Really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing where your coaching career goes in the future. And of course, you know that if I can be of any help, then you know where to find me. Okay, so thank you so much.
No worries. Come visit Australia again.
I will do.
When
as
you can.
soon as I can. Trust me,
Yeah.
I'll be back. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.